And because we care about Switzerland and care about global regulation, we were able to give them the context which they were needed to expand the guidance on staking.
Yeah.
So what you actually see now in Switzerland is that there is a specific, it doesn't say Cardano, but it mentioned slashing, liquid, and all those kind of things. And that means that not all proof of stake protocols are created in the same aspect.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not necessarily good or bad.
Right.
But what we want to get to is
the clarity around it.
Voila. We want to have the clarity.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Woodland Pools. I am so excited to finally have a chance to sit down with Frederik Gregaard. Frederik, thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being Woodland Pools.
It's good finally have a chance to do this. We've run into each other now a couple times in Dubai last year and then Switzerland the year before, and I'm glad it's finally came together to have a chance for us to sit down and have a conversation.
I have a weird idea that we also saw each other in Wyoming quickly.
It's funny you say that. That's funny you say that. I was wondering if I was going to mention. I was like, that was a long time ago. But yes, I was actually at the Wyoming one, the big indoor training arena.
Exactly, with the nice lounges on the side and the great DJ performance, right?
That was really fun. Yeah, man, very good memory. I appreciate that. Yeah. But anyway, so thanks for sitting down. I think for a lot of folks on the channel, obviously they're familiar. Watching the channel are familiar with Cardano, right, and know of the Cardano Foundation. But since it's the first time that you're joining us here on the channel, maybe if we take a step all the way back for folks for some context, what is the mission of the Cardano Foundation in terms of, we have the 3 founding entities, so what's the mission of the Cardano Foundation specifically?
So the mission of the Cardano Foundation is the promotion of 3rd generation blockchains, and the fact that we are non-for-profit is extremely important, right? Because all other entities outside now, the new joiner Intersect is for-profit companies. Now I do realize there is some DAOs and some other things in there, right? But when you kind of look at the core contributors to the Cardano ecosystem, right, is mainly non-for-profit as Cardano Foundation and now Intersect, and the rest is for-profit. So if you look at the pioneering entities, right, it was always, there was 2 of them, right, and an Asian one and IOG, and both of them are for profit. So what does that mean? Well, it means for me that if I have to promote 3rd generation blockchains, Cardano, and be non-for-profit, I do things who is not profitable, has high liability, might get you into jail, or things you can't earn money on. Right? So the way we then dissected that into an elevator pitch is that we care about 3 things. We care about education, specifically of regulators, policymakers, lawyers, and auditors. So clarifying that not everything needs to be financially regulated. There are so many hundreds of different use cases, from land registry to farming in Kenya to DeFi pools to you name it, right? It's on Cardano. Right? But not everything needs a bank or a regulated security token to work, right? The other part we care about is operation resilience. So if you really think about operation resilience, one thing is the architecture. And as I mentioned on stage today, we were under a denial of service attack, we've been under a nation state hack, we've been under so many things in scrutiny. And the architecture which IoT has initially promoted is very, very good. But what is our duty as the community is to build tools for stake pool operators and others that not only do we have one entity, IoG, but we now have 2 entities, being the Cardano Foundation, who has real blockchain monitoring. We actually deliver data now to IoG so they can do their security, right? Based on data from selected stake pool operators and listening nodes around the world. That means that we participate in the operation resilience, plus we run the bug bounty program on the assets of Cardano, plus we look at security audits and risk mitigation on the chain in general, so when we speak about the layer 0 and the layer 1. And we are building tools for stake pool operators to be able to be number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. Because when you look at the data from the Cardano blockchain is unified, right? But when you look at the concept upon which you're looking for errors or you're looking for potential future problems, we actually need to look at that with different lenses. Because if we all look at it with the same lens, we will have a big Johari's window. So in short, we care about that Cardano, from an operational perspective, keeps adding blocks and adding blocks and adding blocks. But we also care about that the economic incentives are correct. So one of the things we speak a lot about is that we actually would like that stake pool operators earn more because of the efforts they do towards securing the blockchain. And the last is we enable adoption. So as you know, Catalyst is the official grant mechanism, but we enable adoption, right? So we bootstrapped and were the initiators of ICANN, which is now completely run with a lot of other contributors, right? But we took the initial steps towards that. We also contribute to Pragma as one of another membership-based organization, also a non-for-profit. So it's actually 3 when you kind of count it like that. Together with 4 other ecosystem participants to build a new Rust node. We also built the Rosetta version 2 in Java, which Binance just transferred to, which basically means if you're a client with Binance, you basically get faster transactions. So if you are withdrawing ADA or reconciling your account, it goes, I think it's about 30, 40 times faster than what they had before in the old Rosetta version. So we built and maintained that. But the fact that we now done it in Java also means that we enabled Java to the ecosystem, and the same goes with TypeScript and Rust and other things. So we care about the developer user experience and try to attract developers. So we do quite a few things under the umbrella of adoption, education, and operation resilience. Just to mention a few things.
So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Man, where do I even start? There's so many things you're saying that were getting me thinking, and it's too bad we don't have that much time today. We'll have to find some more time to follow up on some of these things. But
I'm there for you, right? So
yeah,
if you
I
want to
appreciate
do another
it.
one,
Yeah,
we'll do another one, right?
We definitely should. But let's start. Actually, something you said there was really interesting. From the education side, how do you? What are some of the conversations that you find yourselves having as the Cardano Foundation from an education standpoint? There was a really, that panel that you guys had this morning was really interesting with the folks from Dubai, and so they are clearly positioning themselves, the UAE is positioning themselves as a very crypto-friendly place and trying to make regulations that are sensible for sort of form-fitting for what is going on and this and that. So maybe that's maybe a warmer audience from an education standpoint, but where do you find that you have some of your biggest impacts and wins from an education standpoint when you're working with these larger entities such as governments or things like that? Like how does that process go, and what has that been like?
Well, so first and foremost, you have to be aware that the Cardano Foundation is not a financial regulated company. That means we are not a client of a regulator. So we cannot just knock on the door and say, hey, talk to us, you know?
Sure.
So you actually have to win the trust of the regulator that they want to entertain you, because they don't have a mandate to do so.
Fair enough.
So for instance, under the MiCA 1 negotiations and now going into the MiCA 2 negotiations, which is the stablecoin initiative in the European Union, we were active in speaking to the ones who actually wrote the legislation, right? So we spoke to them and we verified and also explained what Cardano does. And the Cardano Explorer, which is a horrible name, sorry for that, but we were not that inventive. We never wanted to build an Explorer, we wanted to build a RegTech tool. So we could show the regulator what the code is doing. Because we cannot just go to a regulator and say, I know we are not regulated, but you need 10 Haskell developers to understand how Cardano works, right? So what we actually wanted to do is we wanted to build a RegTech tool showing the business logic and the governance logic of Cardano, and it's been very fruitful. So we are now actually the first layer 1 compliant blockchain in the European Union under MiCA. Now what you need to understand is you need to have 2 components, right? You have to have the application layer, so whatever stablecoin you're issuing, and then on the blockchain. And from the foundation, we are ready with what you need for the white paper. So you need to be able to give a white paper to the issuer who explains these things for the regulator on Cardano, right? And you need to be able to prove the sustainability footprint, so the carbon footprint, electricity. So we've basically done that with something called the CCIA. It's a German company, and we have a set of APIs ready now. So at any given time, you can actually, call the API, and you can see exactly what is the stake pool operator's footprint in terms of sustainability. Another discussion was in Switzerland. So the Swiss regulator, FINMA, they issued a guidance on staking, but they were looking at Ethereum. They were not looking at Cardano.
Okay, fair enough.
And that meant that suddenly they were suggesting that all staking is a banking activity. If it's a banking activity, you actually need to be a bank to do certain things.
Because they have, you lose custody, and there's all these things that can happen on Ethereum that we don't have on Cardano, right?
So we basically interacted with them again with RegTech Explorer, call it what you want, right? And because we care about Switzerland and care about global regulation, we were able to give them the context which they were needed to expand the guidance on staking. So what you actually see now in Switzerland is that there is a specific, it doesn't say Cardano, but it mentioned slashing liquid and all those kind of things. And that means that not all proof of stake protocols are created in the same aspect.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not necessarily good or bad.
Right.
But what we want to get to is
the clarity around it.
Voila. We want to have the clarity, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just coming out of the meeting with one of the regulators here, right, where we discussed token definitions and global standards, and they invited us to come back to speak to the top regulator here around taking some decisions about that. So that's a couple of examples of how we try and do that. Of course, a lot of this is closed doors, but some of it is also public consultations, which you can see on our webpage. We try to disclose when we answer public consultations, and we answer quite a few here lately. But this is very legal, nerdy talk. But if you have some lawyers out there, you're interested in our view on those kind of things and financial market infrastructure regulation, you can find that on our webpage.
That's fascinating. I mean, so for a lot of those things I didn't even know you guys were up to, and obviously it's things that they keep you busy and up at night, and I can, I'm a Cardano ambassador. I'm very involved in the ecosystem, and I didn't even know you guys were doing some of those things. So it's very interesting to hear. How, that makes me think another thing is like what's a good way for folks to even get some more insight into, because a lot of the times, people, you think about sort of your average man on the street, right, using Cardano for transactions here and there. A lot of times they just kind of wonder, like, well, what are the founding entities up to, right? And so a lot of people, like, have been asking Emergo what they're doing, and Emergo has been now getting a lot more active again and involved and responsive. But similarly, they're like, oh, what does CF even do? And you guys have clearly been busy with a lot of these different things. So there's a gap there, right? And so what do you?
Not really, right? So
in terms of like bridging that gap, people like understanding more of what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, so actually we publish an activity report every year.
Every year, yeah, that's true.
And that activity report, we highlight what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Now we are coming a little bit out of, you've been around for a while, right? Yeah. So you know that the Cardano Foundation has not always been the most trustworthy counterparty, right? Yeah. So we started, I always think about it, we started with minus trust, and then now we need to get to a level where people trust us. Yeah. So what's very unique, which is happening today, is that we're going to actually publish a part of the Cardano's technical roadmap. Okay. Right. So we kept it quite secret that we did this IBC Cosmos integration, right? Until the Cosmos ecosystem saw it in our GitHub repository and started speaking about it, right? Sure. Yeah. But I always felt I don't want to commit to something I want to do if I'm not certain that I can do it. Right. And what we've done in the Cardano Foundation now is that we build a really good team where nearly everybody is much smarter than I am. And we build really good accountability layers there. So I'm starting to talk not just about what I did last year, but also talk about what I want to do next year. Now, I realize that just because I want to do it, it doesn't mean that I do everything of that. Because, I don't know, there's a curveball, the market changes or whatever. But I would like to get to a situation that I also can say, okay, this is what I did last year, this is what I'm going to do next year. Then I'm going to look back and say, I committed to 10 things, I only did 8. Why didn't I do those 2 things? Sure. Because I have a feeling there is some learnings for even some other ecosystem participants about, what went wrong, so they don't have to do that mistake again. Yeah. And then we do, very experimental things where I just, I think this is so magical, right? So Matthias Benkow from the Cardano Foundation, right? He published something called Parisian Merkle trees, right? Okay. Which basically means that we took the whole Bitcoin blockchain, every single block, every single transaction, put it into one block on the Cardano blockchain. Oh, wow. And then we are allowed that to be updated based on the block movement, right? Now, if you want to sell a media article, you can say, hey, we put the Bitcoin blockchain on Cardano, and we are part of the trust layer of Bitcoin by doing that. Yeah. I think it would be a bit unfair because proof of work is a very, very strong protocol, right? Yeah. But I couldn't find a good use case for that. So I thought, hey, why don't I publish that we technically can do that on Cardano and open the GitHub repositories, right? And have a look because, who knows, somebody might be able to do something with that. And look and behold, I speak to somebody who has petadates of data, right? And you can't just put that on a blockchain. Sure. But they're interested in actually, as they accumulate, how do we do the provenance of that data? How do you ensure that it's not been manipulated or changed? Mm-hmm. And the data keeps growing massively because there's a lot of data input coming in. And now I'm thinking, that's it. This is how we take this experimental thing, the art of the possible in an architectural way, together with a business case. Yeah. But it does require that you sort of nerd out a little bit about some of these GitHub repositories or about these APIs or about what's the art of the possible, right? Yeah. And my hope is that there will be more people who has the luxury to work 100% on Cardano due to the economic opportunities because they have more time to nerd out on it. And by nerding out on it, they also see more opportunities because I'm so proud of what the Cardano ecosystem has built and what we call a third generation blockchain right now. And I think people actually don't understand how strong that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, so I remember when Matthias published that, and I remember like there was sort of a very theoretical sort of idea of like of what you can do, and that's one of the, I think for a lot of people that maybe don't necessarily understand the lower level details, is one of like the superpowers of cryptography, that you can do something like that. You can take like petabytes of data, and then if all you need to do is prove that like it hasn't changed, that using things like Merkle trees and stuff like that, you can have this highly sort of compressed, like very small amount of data that like represents this huge amount of things, and just, you know, you can't necessarily backwards engineer, but you can prove that it hasn't changed, that it's a record of that, right?
So there's a local company here called Scientific Analytical Tools, and they've been a die-hard ambassadors of Cardano for a very long time, and they came, you know, always with leads and say, hey, come to Dubai, Fred, you know, we have to meet this company. One day we sat down with them and I said, you know, why don't you explain to me what you do? And they're in public safety. And they came up with a couple of use cases, and I'm like, that's it, that's the use case. And the power of strong Cardano people is they just called up, you know, the firearms department of Dubai. And they said, Fred, now we're going there. I was like, what do you mean we're going there? And he threw me into a car, we drove down to the headquarters, I had to verify with passport, right? And now, look and behold, 2 years later, we actually built we did the research in the Cardano Foundation together with SAT and Dubai Police, who basically allows us to use a kind of a one-way hash algorithm. So when you fire a firearm into a water tank, you actually have a footprint of the bullet, so 3D rendering, including that with the serial number. We can make that in a way you can explore that without disclosing who you are. Because how it normally works is if you have that data, you will upload it into an international database, and then you're already giving away private identifying information. But using a one-way hash algorithm like that, you can keep the private identifying information locally in country. But you can still explore that, and if you see that match is close enough, the foreign entity can leave a message saying, hey, please disclose yourself. They here can then say, oh, that's high enough or not high enough? That's high enough, okay. We disclose ourselves, and then they start the traditional channels. And now that use case is now being ramped up to global law enforcement because, you know, of course we want global safety specifically around firearms, but we don't want to necessarily take away the liberty or the local culture about how we register and use firearms in the local countries, because that's a part of our culture, right? So whether you're pro or not pro firearms is not the thing. It's how do we respect local costume but still get public safety. And that's the power of what we can do in Cardano now.
Wow, that's incredible. Hey, I know that we're just about out of time. We definitely sit down for longer next time. There's so many other questions I want to ask you, but any last thoughts, or if folks want to find out more, for example, like where they can read about the annual report and the things you guys are up to, what's the best way that people can stay in touch with what's going on with the Cardano Foundation? Yeah,
I think we really tried hard to revamp the CardanoFoundation.org. So I think when you go in there, you see it's a lot better. We also got a new head of marketing, and he's working very hard on communication channels, because a lot of people, they consume Twitter. But if you post something in Twitter in one time zone, you might not catch it, and maybe the discussion goes on. So we are working a little bit more on the slow channels. So blog post, Cardano Foundation, our GitHub repository is starting to be really good. So I really encourage you to go in there. And then of course the activity report, which we publish. And then we are going to also do something called a financial transparency report as well, who's going to talk about economic incentives of the blockchain, but more specifically how we use money in the Cardano Foundation, so we can start getting to that accountability layer, which I spoke about before. Very cool. Frederik, thank you so much for the time. We'll have to do this again soon. If you have any questions for Frederik or the Cardano Foundation team, let us know in the comments down below. And if nothing else, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.